Black Box Podcast, BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Today we're doing another segment for Genius or Fraud, where we're examining someone's platform and we're going to try and find out what is their true agenda. Today we're talking all about self-help author, former congressional candidate, and presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. This is actually the first time I've ever done a Genius or Fraud segment on a woman, and I was thinking about the previous ones that I'd done, and I just realized that they had all been men, and I was like, well, who would be a very kind of somewhat notable woman that I could do for Genius or Fraud? And I thought, why not Marianne Williamson? This is in the heart and soul of the Democratic primary for 2020. We're now in the course still 2019. But I was like, let's talk about Marianne Williamson a little bit. The first kind of introductory thing I would say about the Genius or Fraud segment is the majority of comments that I get on this are kind of coming in two different directions. Normally someone would talk about the person and be like, well, he also believes this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, okay, yes, I would make some claims about a person, and then I would kind of give some sort of commentary, and people would just kind of say some additional lines about, they also believe this particular thing. Well, that's just kind of expanding the thing. Always remember, the point of this segment is this person telling the truth, or are they just making things up to get fame, to get a following? Are they making things up to sell books? That's the thing that we're really going for here. And the other kind of comment that I get is that people just tell me that, no, it's nonsense that someone would ever kind of put things out there that they don't believe. And I just have to completely disagree with that. Of course there are people out there who make things up to sell books. There are people out there who fabricate things just so they can get on TV more frequently, so that they can get, well, money, and they probably get off on the power tripping angle of it too. But what do we make of somebody like Marianne Williamson? Does she fall into any of those categories? Or is she something quite different? Or how about this one? Maybe we're entering into a new realm of our Genius or Fraud territory. What a lot of people say about Marianne Williamson is, like Ian Black even said that she should be the Secretary of Crystals, where they're thinking that it's not exactly that she would just be making up stuff to have a following. Is she somebody who is just kind of promoting a bunch of wacky, far-out woo-woo just to kind of spread her stuff out to the masses, to a kind of unsuspecting populace? Is that what's going on? What I can say about Marianne Williamson is that she talks a lot about the dark psychic force in American politics, saying the heart and soul of why she's running for office is we don't really have anybody who has ever addressed the kind of root cause of the problem with all the destruction in the world, and she calls it the dark psychic force. I mean, I really don't like that name. I came from the James Randi school of thought, where we're talking all about, like, anything to do with psychic powers. I'm somewhat skeptical of it. Once again, I cite James Randi as an influence, people not being able to demonstrate that stuff under controlled conditions. But what she actually means by the dark psychic force is, it's talking about trying to get people to think in a new way, trying to get people to be sort of just more aware of how people are using destructive actions to manipulate the voting masses. And that I do not think is fraudulent. I think that is a very important thing to say, and she is the louder voice than anyone on that, where it's like, I was at a bar once, and I was talking to a guy. He's like going on and on about American politics and talking about all these problems and how, the American people are getting cheated on this and how the system is just broken. And of course, I'm just going to be like, all right, then what do we do about it? How do you fix that problem? And his response was, the revolution of consciousness is much stronger than the revolution of military force. And that's kind of Marianne Williamson in a nutshell. That's what she's really trying to come at, by sort of just saying that we need to get people to start thinking in a different way. This is not something that's going to be solved with guns. This is not going to be something that's going to be solved with wars. It's like the American people need to be thinking in a different way, and just to kind of recognize the quote-unquote politics of love. And that I do not believe is fraudulent. When I did my first upload on Marianne Williamson on this channel, I kind of said that there was a hole in the Democratic Party. There was something that was very much missing from, well, a presidential candidate, if you will. And that was what I call the eco-conscious side of the Democrats, where it's like, well, I shouldn't have used that term exactly, because it's so much more than eco-conscious. It's like eco-conscious, spiritual, love in a bottle sort of thing side of the Democratic Party, and it's been heavily neglected. The better way to describe it would be the people who watch the Gaia Network. And Tim Ryan, the congressman from Ohio who's running for president, he said that he wanted to win the yoga vote. That was his plan. He's all about yoga and mindfulness. But I wish he hadn't labeled it that, because it's so much more than just yoga. Like, I couldn't even just put it into a few words there. It's really just people who are very much fascinated with kind of what Marianne Williamson talks about, the politics of love, about being the sort of spiritual teacher that needs to guide the country. That sort of aspect. Well, a lot of Democrats are going to be voting that way, but they really probably didn't feel like they had a candidate in the past. And Marianne Williamson does encompass a lot of those sort of characteristics that have been greatly neglected by the Democratic Party. And I mean, like, Tim Ryan did talk about it years ago. He wrote a book about it, A Mindful Nation. But the thing is, though, that just didn't reach a massive audience. I mean, if you ask the average person on the street about Tim Ryan, they probably won't even know who he is. I mean, like, not everyone watches the news or follows the debates. But Marianne Williamson is making a large splash. And to say, though, that something like that, is that fraudulent or is that brilliant? Well, I don't really think that Marianne Williamson is someone who is making stuff up. I don't think she falls into the category of someone who is kind of just saying a bunch of far-out, silly stuff just so she can get an unsuspecting group of people to follow her. What people more accuse her of is that they accuse her of trying to just sort of be like, oh, well, I'm just full of love, and like, you have to love the rocks and love the dirt and love the sky, and yeah, I need to be your leader because I'm more full of love than anybody else. Love this, love that, and just I'm right because I love everything. That's what people are accusing her of, is just kind of having a platform that is not meant to be taken seriously. And a lot of the critics do not take Marianne Williamson seriously. And I would say to a certain extent that they are probably incorrect to do so, because it's a very serious problem that people are going to be sort of kind of focused on that dark psychic force. Once again, I don't like the name, but she's the only person that I've really heard talk about addressing that. And I do believe that anyone would be incorrect to just sort of think that that is something that we shouldn't take seriously, that the plan and the attitude of the politicians involved is just, well, they're just full of destructive issues and destructive actions, and it's just leading to the same broken cycle of greed and power-hungry mongering that's going on in the American political system, especially in the White House. And it's like, this is not a Democrat or Republican issue at that point. That is something that's affecting absolutely everything to do with our political system. I mean, she calls it the dark psychic force. What would be a better name for that? So, what would be a better name that we could call that sort of thing? I would just say maybe the cycle of destructive behaviors that we have going on in Washington, D.C. I mean, that is something that I do not believe is fraudulent at all. But what I would say, though, is that in terms of reaching a mass audience, she has a very different brand of politics that is going to be difficult to connect with the entirety of the Democratic Party. And you're seeing this so clearly in the 2020 general election. Well, I should say the 2019 primaries. I'm always getting ahead of myself. In the primaries, people are really sort of seeing that somebody like Marianne Williamson has a particular brand of politics that is very much in line with a fraction of the Democratic Party. I mean, but not the whole wing. Not the entirety of the party is in line with the stuff that she's talking about. And a lot of people would just sort of cite that maybe she doesn't have the administrative experience to run. I mean, it doesn't mean anything. We have Donald Trump in the White House right now. It's like, you don't have to have an enormous amount of political experience to become president of the United States. I mean, first and foremost, you just have to win the general election. But what I would say is that I was listening to Marianne Williamson on C-SPAN. She had posted on her Instagram account. It was on Instagram TV. And she was just talking about growing up, about how her parents, like, kind of just would just take the family on, like, far out excursions, take them to Vietnam and such, and have them just introduce them to people all over the world, and they're just like, it just gets under your skin, is what she would say. And then, like, that sort of whole thing about just recognizing that all people are human and connecting with people in different ways, that is something that is also greatly neglected in the American political discussion, because so many people like to try and create this type of us versus them mentality. And I think it's great to hear a political candidate, much more a presidential candidate, talk about some of those issues. Just the whole fact about how we view society, how we view the political spectrum, trying to get people to think in a different way. And I really do commend Marianne Williamson for talking about those things. But they have, her caricature on SNL, all just like, I have energy and a crystal here. And that's the way that I think a lot of people are seeing her. But once again, I don't believe that that is the heart and soul of her platform. I mean, I don't really believe that that is necessarily... Well, it's not like what she's all about. What she is all about is sort of just... the sort of uplifting thinking and optimism that is greatly missing from the political system. And you really see, though, in the Democratic primary, so many candidates are just, they're trying to do a little bit of mudslinging. They're also trying to do a little bit of divisiveness. They're trying to kind of get their large fraction of the Democratic Party to be turned against the other fraction. They're just kind of sort of trying to fight it out, and the kind of greater fraction of the party will prevail. But according to somebody like Marianne Williamson, that's been done time and time again, and that is not successful. That sort of divisive and going to war mentality. And this is done purely in the mind. This is done purely in sort of like a discourse and intellectual manner. But that's what a debate is. I mean, a debate is just a boxing match that is done with words instead of gloves. That's really all it is. And I would say, though, that in one area that I've mentioned before on the channel is that I was somewhat kind of underwhelmed with Marianne Williamson at the Democratic primary debates, because I had been waiting for her more than any other candidate to get up there and talk about this, because that's one of the biggest reasons why she's running, is that to be on the debate stage and to reach a national audience. And she just says something like, Donald Trump is full of fear, we need love. Donald Trump has fear and we have love, and the only thing that can beat fear is to have love. I've said so many things right now about her plans for optimism, trying to get people to think in a different way, the revolution of consciousness, but it's like she was just kind of reducing everything down in her closing statement, just love, love, love. You need more than one word. You need to reach people with more than one word. That's kind of what I felt like that's what a lot was happening in the Democratic primary debates. Some people have been saying that Marianne Williamson most likely will not be the president of the United States, but some people think that she's running for president because she is planning to become something like Secretary of Education, or perhaps a different cabinet position. Now, I mean, Marianne Williamson does introduce herself as a spiritual teacher. That wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world, because the Trump administration was under fire for choosing Betsy DeVos as the Secretary of Education, because they said she didn't really have a background in education. And a lot of people are just kind of saying, no, the person has to be a public school teacher. I'm not that strict. I mean, I think it would probably be best if our Secretary of Education came from an educational background, which Marianne Williamson does. That might be something to look out for if there is a Democratic president in 2020, but it really would depend on who it is, and they might already be cutting deals with people. That's the stuff that really doesn't get highlighted enough. The backstabbing and the kind of under-the-table deals. And back when we did the upload on Kevin Shipp, we were talking sort of about how he kind of differentiates between the deep state and the shadow government. And the deep state is kind of the influences from financial powers on the presidency, and the shadow government is the kind of secret dealings that are going on that the American people don't see. This stuff happens. That stuff absolutely happens. Somebody has to kind of endorse a particular candidate, and they get a cabinet position in return. Joe Biden's wife blurted that out on national television about, Joe had his choice of a Secretary of State or Vice President, and he's just like, shh. That was a famous shh gaffe. It's like Biden's not the only person who runs wild with his mouth. It's also his wife. But that's the stuff that Marianne Williamson's trying to talk about, the corrupt, broken political cycle. Would I say that she's a fraud? No, I don't. Do I think that she also cares about power? Yes, absolutely. I don't think that it's possible for somebody to run for president without caring about power. Do I think that she's pure evil? No, I think she's somewhere in kind of a different category that a lot of people haven't had a lot of familiarity with. I mean, she's ambitious. She does have her own plan. She's definitely trying to promote herself. But the thing is, though, in the 21st century, I think we should have the awareness that someone can also care about money, someone can also care about power, and they can also have some genuine connection to their ideas. And the people who are selling ideas, well, if they're trying to sell them, the ambition is to reach as many people as possible. So that's one of the things that I think that is going on with Marianne Williamson. Are people using the presidential primary as a kind of way to just market themselves? Yes, absolutely. Is Marianne Williamson doing that? Yes. But does that make her a fraud? No. I think that she has a lot of good things to say, and the people can learn a lot from her. But that's all I will say about Marianne Williamson now. What do you think? Until next time.